Boker Tov, everyone. Boker Tov, everyone, and a very good Erev Shabbat. We have a very strange story in this week's parsha. The story is very well known. That when the Jewish people came to the borders of the land of Israel, so they fought two wars. One was against Sichon, who was the king of the Amorites, and one was against Og, who was the king of the Bashan. The Bashan is Golan, Syria, pretty much Syria today. And the tribes of Gad and Reuven, especially Reuven, came to Moshe and they said, we're in the cattle business. We have a lot of cattle, and the Golan, the Bashan, is pasture land. Now the rest of Israel is, even today, much of the cattle is from the Golan and the Bashan, because it's like a flat plateau. So they said to him, we want to stay here. Give us the lands of Sichon and Og, and Aver Yarden, east of the Jordan, and that'll be, we give up our right to the land of Israel, so you'll divide the land of Israel to 10 tribes and not to 12. On the surface, their claim has logic to it. Why should they be forced to go west of the Jordan, where the pasture land is not available, when they're in the business of raising animals? And having conquered the lands of Sichon and Og, we read in last week's parsha already that parts of the Jewish people already settled there. They built cities there. So therefore, Moshe's reaction is very hard to understand. We don't find Moshe being intolerant of the demands of the Jewish people. And we don't find him having, so to speak, a fit of anger over it. And in fact, the Gemara teaches us that every time that Moshe did become angry, so to speak, bad things happened. As is true, we know from all of us, that in fits of anger, people can destroy themselves and others. But Moshe here reacts, wow. He says, well, you're a tarbut ra, you're a bad society, you're traitors, you will weaken the faith of the Jewish people. He's not willing at all to hear them, which is uncharacteristic of Moshe. Not only that, we find that Moshe doesn't refer this case to heaven. We had other instances where Moshe didn't know what to do, and so he consulted, so to speak, with heaven. He changed from the role of a leader to the role of a prophet. So why doesn't he ask, heaven, should I listen to the Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven or not? Do they have justification in their claim? He doesn't do that. He rebuffs them very strongly. So the story should end there. You come a proposition to Moshe Rabbeinu, you tell him what you want, and Moshe says, no, I'm not going to allow that. Not only that, he says it has terrible consequences. And you weaken the heart of the Jewish people, and you weaken their loyalty to the land of Israel. Why should you do such a thing? And he says, you're repeating the error of your forefathers, of those that came right before you, that when the Meraglim came, so Reuven and Gad were represented in the spies, and they said, no, we're not going. So you saw what happened. You saw that for another 38 years you were in the desert, and that whole generation had to die out. So how do you come again? But the story does not end there, because people are persistent. And one of the rules in life is that eventually people do what they want to do. And logic and everything else does not stand in their way. We are prisoners of our emotions and our wants, so our wants become needs. And when we need something, so nothing should stand in our way. The human nature. So the Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven come back to Moshe and they say, listen, let's make a deal. We will become the leading force to invade the land of Israel. We will set up commando units, so to speak. Chalutzim will be the first. And we won't go to Transjordan until everybody is settled. So it'll take 7 years to conquer the country and 7 years to divide it. So for 14 years, we won't see our homes. But Moshe, please, Al Tavirenu es Hayarden. Don't make us go west of the Jordan. We're going to take our share here because it's beneficial for us, economically and otherwise. And this time Moshe relents. He doesn't repeat what he said before. He doesn't say, you're a bunch of traitors. You're repeating the mistakes of your forefathers. You're creating an evil society. He doesn't repeat those harsh words. And they negotiate and they come to a settlement that they don't have to go and inherit west of the Jordan. He will give them the lands of Sichon and Og, but they have to keep their word that they will be the leading force. They will be those that fight to conquer the land of Israel, and that they won't go home. They won't desert the 10 tribes until the 10 tribes are triumphant and have divided the land amongst themselves. And the Gemara in Kedushin derives from this entire conversation how to make a conditional sale, how to make a conditional agreement. So the Gemara says, Hein kodim lalav. You have to say the positive side first before you say the negative. There are a whole series of halachot that are derived from this conversation. But the bottom line is that they're not going. They'll go for 14 years, they'll fight. They want to be with their brothers, but they're not going. They're going to be in Transjordan. And Moshe agrees to it. Moshe lets it happen. Now Moshe does one other thing that the mp4 discuss, says, what did he mean by this? Then that is, he takes a portion of the tribe of Manasseh and he attaches them to the Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven, that they should also take their share, not where the rest of the tribe takes it, which is west of the Jordan, but they'll also take it in the eastern, across the Jordan. Well, what's that? If Moshe felt that this is such a terrible thing, as is obvious from his original reaction, so then why did he take half a tribe and add it to them? What he should have done is try and take away, was Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven, so try and separate, that the Bnei Gad will desert the Bnei Reuven, and Bnei Reuven will be isolated, because they were the ones that really wanted it. And instead he adds. So the Netziv of Volozhin in his parish to the Chumash in the Hamikdavar says that Moshe attempted to ameliorate the situation by sending half the tribe of Manasseh, because Manasseh is from Yosef, and there's no one that loved Eretz Yisrael more than Yosef. Yosef said, centuries from now, take my bones and bring me back home. And it's Yosef's descendants, the daughters of Tzlofchad, who insist that they have a share in Eretz Yisrael. So they are the ultra-nationalists. So Moshe figures, the Netziv says, that by sending them with the Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven, they will have a positive influence upon them. So that over the centuries, Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven won't see themselves as distinctively separate from the rest of the Jewish people because they're east of the Jordan. But they'll realize that their homeland is the land of Israel, and they'll be positive about it. And then it says that was the tragedy here, that didn't work. The Chafetz Chaim has a parable that if you take a boiling hot glass of water and you mix it with cold water, the boiling hot water doesn't continue anymore. It becomes lukewarm and then it becomes cold. So he says that's true with good things and bad things. You try and save a bad thing by adding a good thing to it, but the end is that the good thing itself is compromised. So why does Moshe change his mind? He could have insisted, that's it. And especially we see how vehement he was originally. So the mp4 are all interested in understanding what happened here. So the first lesson is what I pointed out before, that people do what they want to do. And all the logic in the world will not change their mind. And that there's a limit to how much they're willing to accept, so to speak, from Moshe. Especially Moshe is, so to speak, a lame duck here. They know Yoshua is the one. So Moshe is unable to assert his authority as he once did. Secondly, they say to themselves, listen, if going to Eretz Israel is so important, and it's of such vital interest to the Jewish people, why doesn't God let Moshe go? Why is Moshe going to stay in Ever HaYarden? So here you have a psychological dilemma. Moshe is not going because of a punishment. They are not going out of their desire, out of their free will. It's not comparable. But again, those niceties of logic don't change their wants and needs and desires. So they say, Moshe, Moshe making a big speech about it, and he's going to be in Las Vegas. So why should we listen to him? Then there's a third idea here. That explains the difference between Moshe and between the Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven. Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven are playing a short-term game. In the short term, and short term is a relative amount of time. For us, it's a very small amount of time. In terms of history, it's a much longer period of time, but it's also not permanent. In the short term, they have a lot of cattle. They need grazing land. The only grazing land that they see that's available to them is east of the Jordan. So they ask for something which is understandable. Moshe is playing a long-term game, because the entire Torah is a long-term game. It's very hard to know what are the consequences of what is done immediately. I mean, we are in a situation now where that's obvious. In the short term, we did a great thing. Now, who knows what's going to happen? What are the consequences? Every time in life there are consequences. And most of the time the consequences are not predictable and are usually unintended. That's the question of all of the social welfare legislation that has existed in the Western world for the past 70 years. It's all intended to do good. But empirically, statistically, it's done only harm. It's destroyed the lower class. It's an unintended consequence. No one thought that that was going to happen. So the Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuben, in their short-term gain, say, listen, we have to raise the cattle.